Had my first closing today. It was quite a transaction. A lot of excitement from beginning to end. It was 11 days from pending contract to close, 3 days to get it under contract from the time we put it on the market. We ended up having 9 buyers bidding on it and 24 showings in those 3 days using an approach of teasing the market. If you want to hear about that, oh, and by the way, I also was able to achieve 29% more net cash at the closing for my seller than he was expecting. So I'm pretty excited about that. If you want to hear more about that, you're in the right place. Let's chat. Hi, I'm Mike Cerrone with the Comeback Agent, and I'm sharing my journey back into real estate, where my goal is to close 25 transactions in my first year. And I'm just sharing the lessons and the journey on this channel. So if you like that kind of thing, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, give us some encouragement, write some comments down below. Let me know we're on the right track. All right, so today I wanted to share with you that I had a closing, my very first closing of the year, 2025. And it came from a past client who had called me up and had reached out to me. They found me. I hadn't been marketing to my PCSOI at that time, which was an error. I should have been doing that earlier on. But luckily for me, they reached out, and I hadn't talked to these folks in probably over 25 years when I had helped them purchase their first property. And they had stayed in that property and luckily hadn't used another agent. They had a parent who had a need to sell a property, and they thought of me, reached out, and I was back in the business, so I was able to help them. Just the timing was perfect. Wonderful people. I will say that it was months. They actually had contacted me back in October, and it's now March. So these things can take a long time to develop. They had told me they had a need, and I met with them, and we kind of sketched out a plan for what they needed to do with the property to prepare it. And just through a series of events, it just took a while. And then we finally got together in mid-February, and then we put it on the market at the end of February, and we got it under contract in 3 days. And then we just closed it up today, 11 days after getting it under contract. So but I wanted to tell you that the background was PCSOI, past clients, a sphere of influence. That was the source. And that's why you really have to work that source all the time. I hadn't worked it, and it's amazing. It still provided business for me. But just imagine if I had been working it this entire time, who knows? So I've started that reach out. That'll be another little video to share what we're doing there. But anyway, on this transaction, really cool. As I said, great people. I'm basically helping a little old lady sell a house. She's getting up there in age, and her son is helping as a POA to help facilitate the transaction. And so I dealt with him during the transaction. But for me, in my mind, she's my client because she legally is the client, but also in my mind, she's my client. And so I really wanted to do well by her, and I think we did. So we decided this was a property. It was a small house, and it needed a little bit of TLC. This lady and her husband had purchased the property in 1960, 65 years ago. They purchased it new in 1960, 65 years ago. Just incredible. And I'm sure they have done some updating over time, but it didn't look like it. Looked like it was pretty much original. And so it's a cute little house, but original, very dated, little brick with a basement, no garage. And so I just shared exactly what it was in my marketing in the MLS. We had picked a price that I'd given a range, and my seller had created an objective that was pretty strong objective for based on the condition of the house, and but not unrealistic. It was in the realm of possibility. And then we utilized a strategy called Coming Soon. I'm sure you're aware of that, where basically we tease the market for a certain number of days through the MLS. And every market's different. My market, you can do that for 7 days, and then it has to go active. So we used all 7 days, and we got a lot of early interest in the property, people reaching out, wanting me to put it on the market earlier. But I'd outlined the entire thing in the MLS and the private comments. And that basically was, hey, we've got a property coming on the market, but it's not going to be coming on the market till Friday. So we put it on Saturday to start teasing, and Friday is when it went active. And that Friday they could do showings, and we allowed showings for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And our objective was then to have any and all offers had to be presented by noon on Monday, and those offers had to have an acceptance deadline no sooner than Tuesday at noon, which is what everybody picked. And our market has actually been slowing down. We've been slowing down for over a year, and I didn't know what to expect. I tried coming soon once another opportunity that had arisen, and it didn't work. So you never know if these things are going to work or not. But this time, it worked really well. So again, we got all this interest over 7 days. I had mainly investors because this is a property that could be fixed up. And I had to explain that to my client. Always make sure your client knows exactly what's going on. And I had explained that we had a couple different opportunities here if we went in at this option. And I gave them the option, by the way, of selling it as is or fixing it up and selling it. And they selected and looked at the options, and they decided they want to try to sell it as is first. And if that didn't work, then we look at some other options. And so we went out as is. And so I labeled in the MLS just like that. This is what this property is. It's dated. It's a fix-up type property. It's an opportunity. And we had a couple different people we were targeting. One was investors who want to do a fix and flip. Investors, or the second group is investors who want to buy and hold and rent it out. And the third group were first-time home buyers. And interestingly, we got all three in this process, which was pretty cool. So again, we kind of teased it out there. We got all this interest, and then we released it on Friday. Had a ton of showings the first day. I think it was 18. And then we had a couple more on that weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We were getting offers in on Friday. They start to come in. And the first offers were investors that were doing cash and wanted to buy it at an attractive price for them and fix it up. And so that's where we started. And we started to have them kind of compete with each other. So I was letting them all know what was going on as we went, enough information to know kind of where they were in the process without harming my seller's position in any way. So I often would not share price of the other offers, but the fact that we did have other offers. And so that created a lot more interest, and some would restructure their offer before we were going to present on Monday at noon. Some of them said, no, I'm going to let it ride. And I had a spreadsheet to track all of it. In fact, I've shared that in another video. Be sure to look for that if you want to see it. And basically, we started to track all this, and then we start to get some owner-occupant type property buyers. We got some people who were going to buy and hold. And we got a lot of people gave us feedback and say, hey, it's a nice house, but we're just not right for us. So we knew that we were at a pretty good spot in the market. We weren't overshooting, but we weren't giving it away because people were turning it away. So that's good too, by the way. All these little indicators are helpful. With sharing, again, all that with my client. I give them the information right away, unless they say they don't want it. So my client was seeing all these showings as they were coming in, and fully in the loop with anytime I got an offer, I let them know and let them know exactly how this thing was developing. Ultimately, we ended up in 9 offers were competing against one another. And then you kind of have to make some decisions on where you want to go next. And what I ended up doing was saying, hey, it's Monday, it's noon. Thank you so much for your offer. You have made it into the quality of the game here. You are in contention. We've got 9 offers. And if you would like to adjust your offer before I present, I'm going to actually present in 2 hours. So if you would like to adjust your offer and send me in a new one, please do. And if not, I completely understand. And many of them did, which was cool. So they restructured their offer and sent them in, and they were all kind of bumping up and bumping up. And we had a best offer, and we had a second that was really close. And so we actually, I went back to them for sure, and I'm trying to remember if I included, a couple other people, but there were 2 that ended up battling at the end. And what ended up happening was they actually ended up matching each other above the asking price, which was amazing. We didn't expect that at all. It was so you get that adrenaline going, and we picked of the two, we picked the one we thought would close the quickest and had the highest probability of closing because they were putting more down. Um, and we did put that together. And then the one that came in second, though, was still very interested and asked if they could put in a backup offer. And backup contract, I don't typically do that, but I went ahead and did it on this one. I said, that makes sense. I'm going to use that as a tool to keep my first one in check because I knew, or I just felt like inspection issues were going to come up because this is an old property. And none of them said sell as is. I didn't say sell as is, although our contract says that. But everybody should have the right to an inspection, and in my opinion. And so we allowed that, and that was fine. So what happened was the buyer that won did do their inspection, and they nailed us with an inspection request. They didn't bell; they could have belled out, but they stayed in, and they nailed us with an inspection request with 42 items. 42 big things they wanted the seller to do. And so my seller, of course, was a little off put by that at the beginning and say, no, that's fine. Let's just negotiation. Let's just work this out. And that's something you got to keep in mind. I immediately told the seller what was going on, and here's all the information. And we're going to talk about it and strategize on it in the morning because that was late at night. And I said, hey, we'll talk about it. And so we did, and by then everything was calmer, and we put together a strategy. In this case, because I was in a very strong position, and not really me, the seller, but I feel like I'm with them in the game, and because we were in a very strong position, I recommended that we actually counter that we're not going to do anything, not a single thing at the property. We're happy you did your inspection. Glad you know everything that's going on. But I got buyers coming out of the woodwork. I got two offers. I got a backup offer. At the exact same price. So if you don't want it, I understand. But we'll just talk to the second buyer. There's no way. I didn't tell the buyer agent this. But there's no way we're going to do the 42 items. And so we countered back and we went in. And so we do nothing. And the other agent called me up and said, "You're not going to do anything?" Said, "No, seller's not going to do anything." And so he went back and forth a little bit. And after a few minutes, he said, "Well, would you at least do X?" Okay. Would you at least do X? So there's a list of 42 items, and the guy says, "Will you at least do this one thing?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you want? What's your proposal?" And and he told me. And the beauty of that, by the way, is we were able to narrow down that 42 item list to one. See, sometimes you got to be really harsh in your negotiations and your extremes to try to bring everybody to somewhere in the middle that makes sense. They were way out in left field, and we were way out in right field, and we needed to kind of pull us to center field. Baseball analogy, but and so that's what happened. Is he said, "Well, would you at least do this one thing?" And I said, "Well, I know, give me the proposal." And so he gave me the proposal, and I shared that with the seller, and we said, well, back and forth of ways. And then we finally said, yeah, maybe we'll do that. And then he said, well, I got to get it by the seller, and then, the buyer. And then the buyer wasn't going to agree to that. They were worried about having so many items, but they weren't walking away. See, I have a couple little lessons I learned is one, it's what they don't say that matters. See, they could have terminated at the in our state at the inspection. They could have just terminated the agreement if they didn't like it and walk away, but they didn't. They gave us this giant list. So even though it was bizarre and overbearing, I knew they still wanted to play. So that was good. That was the lesson I took out of that. That was what I heard from them. The other lesson is something that I'll talk about in another call, but I call it the tug of war. It's very important to have a tug of war during a negotiation where both parties are pulling and they're not quite getting what they want. They're giving up a little bit, they're pulling and they're getting a little bit. If one party moves too fast to the middle, say, or towards the other party, then the other party thinks, wow, I could have got more. I could have got more. And so they'll they'll start pulling backwards or starting to ask for more. And I've been in too many negotiations that I've learned over my lifetime, some of them very painful for me personally. When I gave a little too fast and the other side pulled back hard, too many examples. One when I was trying to buy a property, one when I was trying to sell a business. I mean, so many things, but that's another story for another day. I just learned that if you move too fast, the other side thinks, oh, I left money on the table and now I gotta reassess. And but if you keep pulling, if both sides keep pulling and they're both kind of fighting, they're both kind of losing a little bit of the time, that deal gets tight. See, neither party is happy. Neither party is completely happy and neither party is completely upset. So they're more likely to stick together. I've learned that over time. And so that's what happened on this transaction is parties were way at the extremes on this inspection negotiation. And then the other side moved way to the middle and just said, well, we just want this one item. And so we pulled over and said, well, let's talk about it. And then they pulled back and we pulled back and then they pulled back and then we came to the middle. Anyway, we ended up getting to an agreement. The other thing that was important here is we were looking for an accelerated close for a variety of reasons. It didn't have to happen that way, but it would be beneficial. And so because of that, we were looking for somebody who could close fast. And then when that inspection came up, we wanted to turn the inspection items into cash. So instead of making certain repairs and having to hire people and take time, and possibly bids that are final price higher than a bid, et cetera, we'll just reduce it all to cash. And which is what we did. We settled everything into a dollar amount that was a credit from the seller to the buyer, which was acceptable to my seller. It was ecstatic and the buyer was happy with it, although it went down to the wire. It didn't look like it was going to come together. That happens a lot. If that's happening, that's actually good. Again, that's the tug of war. It's very frustrating, but that's okay. My tug of war on that inspection took a day and a half of just constantly going back and forth. But I knew if I wanted this thing to get to closing, especially with so many items, I had to play the tug of war to keep the parties involved. Well, it worked, and we finally got that agreed on, and then we moved to the closing, which again occurred today. And my seller is just above the moon, right? And it was really interesting because when we met and after we'd reviewed all the figures and the numbers and everything, my seller said, Mike, if I get X out of this deal, I'm going to be very happy if I walk out of closing with X. And I said, okay, good. That's aggressive, but let's see what we can do. Well, we ended up getting X plus 29%. X plus 29%. That's a lot of moolah in this situation. I mean, we're not talking about a small dollar. This is a big dollar. So it really added up. And by the way, I'm going to use that for marketing later. And I've already asked this seller, hey, can I get a testimonial from you? And he said, oh, yeah, absolutely. You betcha. And so I will use that in my marketing in the future to let other sellers know and other people know that, hey, I can get some pretty great results. It's not going to, no guarantee, but they do happen and they're fun. Remember, you have to toot your own horn moving forward into the world, into your marketing. Anyway, so I'm babbling a lot here, but it was a lot of fun. I hope that you're learning a lot. I'll tell you one other thing. This was my first transaction after pretty much 15-year absence. And so I'm trying to document everything and I'm trying to do everything myself so that I can create a system that as I turn up my volume, I'll be able to easily wrap these little pieces up much faster. I've been spending almost the 11 days focused on this, which is way too much for one transaction. It's probably taken up at least half of my total working time. And that, again, that's just too much. But I knew that would happen. I knew I was okay with that if I could just document everything and create a system for next time so it'll go faster. So that's the other thing to do is make sure you're making notes and checklists about what you're doing and how you can make this thing work faster next time. Have it in your mind. You're creating a machine that's going to do this over and over and over and over again. And you want to create a better and better process each and every time. All right, so that's another little insight I hope is helpful. Well, if you like this video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions for me, go ahead and drop them down in the comments. And again, I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a wonderful, productive, and fantastic day. Take care for now. All right, bye now.